In my work, I specialize in strivers, really hardworking people, ambitious people. What all strivers I've ever met have in common is that the higher they climb and the more success that they have, the more insecure they feel in their own success because they're not quite sure that they've earned it or deserve it. That's called imposter syndrome, of course. It's completely natural. It only really doesn't happen to one group that I've found, the people who really are imposters. Dark triads in business or in personal life are people who are above average in three characteristics. Narcissism, it's all about me. Machiavellianism, I'm willing to do what it takes, including hurting you, to get my way. And psychopathy, to be psychopathic, which is to say, I'm gonna hurt you and feel no remorse. You might think that that's super rare. It's not. 1 in 14 people in the population is above average on those three characteristics. Here's the truth. If you're doing really well in your career and you're being rewarded for it, and you're a good, normal, healthy person, you're gonna sort of wonder, is this earned? What you're doing here as a healthy person is that you know what you're good at, and you know what you're not good at. Well, guess what the world sees? What you're good at, that's why you're getting ahead. What do they not see? The things that only you see, which is what you're trying to get better at. So what do you do if you have imposter syndrome? The answer is to understand it, keep up to date with it, and keep trying to get better at the things that you're not good at yet. This is an opportunity. It's for growth, for becoming the person that you truly want to be.
What's going on, family? Hope everything is well with you. So, how many masks are you wearing right now? 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5? That's the question of the day, man. And I think that the piece that we just put out was a very telling piece. And of course, the story was self-explanatory, but you know that there's a deeper thought that went into creating that short story. There was a deeper thought that went into the ins and outs of it. Could you figure it out? Did you understand what was going on within the story and within James? Who did James represent? Well, in looking at the story, let's examine some of the things that was going on with James. Based upon the way that he was brought up, based upon his early life, James witnessed the men in his family working hard, trying to provide for their family. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeing men at work, in action, actively trying to provide their family with the life that they feel they should have. There's nothing wrong with that. And so what James saw was the men around him taking on various responsibilities, various activities. And so now you come to understand what the masks mean. They mean responsibilities that you have. Things in life that you have to take control of if you want life to go well. And so for men and women, but especially for men, there are many masks that you have to wear. And so before James left the house after looking over himself and the way that he's dressed, his attire, his suit, maybe his tie, fixing the state of his hair, he takes a moment to pause and pick up the masks that he would wear throughout the day and put them on, because there are going to be various responsibilities that he's going to have to shoulder throughout the day. He's expecting that that's going to be the case. And so mentally he's preparing himself to meet the challenge. Well, now as the story goes along, there are some elements of it that, in my opinion, start to lean toward things that could be unhealthy and unrealistic. Because the statement was made about James that his mindset was that he was going to try to become everything for everyone. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know about, what you might think of it, but that sounds absolutely impossible. So I think that we're starting to go down the dangerous path when it comes to James, because that kind of mindset, I think, is a recipe for disaster. He's starting to add the various ingredients, and I think this is going to end up in a difficult place. But he continues. He takes on the role of a father, of a provider, of a leader, of a worker, all of the possible masks that a person could wear. He takes them on and he carries them for years, to the point where he's convinced, or he's attempted to convince everyone around him, that he's some kind of superhuman. To the point where there's an individual who makes a statement about him being strong, always being ready to help, you know. And so I think that of the millions and maybe billions of men around the world who take the responsibilities that they have to shoulder from day to day very seriously, I think that there's a lot of people who respond to things just like James. I think they do. And not in a positive way. So this morning's discussion for me is more about caution than anything, about being careful. Because you really don't know. You really have no idea of the types of pressures and difficulties and what kind of effect it'll have on you. You don't know until you're actually in a situation where those pressures and those difficulties, they become too much. They become too much. And that's what happened with James. It was simply too difficult for him to sustain. How you going to do all that at one time? How? And then the particular mask that you pick requires a particular set of skills. So now every mask that you carry with you, you have to be skilled at. And that in itself is a difficult thing to do. So I think that what James is doing, he's setting himself up for failure. But now let's proceed. Let's proceed. So James is in a difficult spot. And I have to admit that because, as I mentioned, I think he's setting himself up for failure. But as we go along in the story, we come to a point where James is sitting in his car. And as he's sitting there, he's contemplating really the path that he's chosen. Now, the story doesn't go into a whole lot of detail. I did that on purpose because I want you to fill in maybe what he was feeling or what he was thinking. I want you to fill that in. But he's sitting in his car and he's going over the day. And he's thinking about the time when someone asked him how he was doing, and he almost told them how he felt. Now, what was the hesitation? Why did I put that in the story? Well, because a lot of times when dealing with things that register on the emotional level, I will admit that a lot of the brothers have a difficulty. A lot of us have difficulty expressing what we feel emotionally, either because for the times that we've been emotionally available, that's been weaponized, or it could be that you were raised like James. You were raised to look for the most productive way to do things. You don't want to waste energy. You don't want to waste time. You want to use that time and energy that you have to produce something tangible, something physical, something that can be used to benefit the people around you. And that's understandable. That's understandable. But at some point, if you don't reaffirm yourself, if you don't look at the foundation of what all these masks rest on, then eventually the whole setup is going to implode. And so that's what happens with James. One small task that was asked of him, one more thing that somebody wanted him to do, which wasn't necessarily anything more difficult than he had been doing, and that was a trigger for him. James is in quite a pickle. He's in a difficult situation. He put himself in a dangerous spot because now James is going to have to deal with the mask that he has taken and made a part of himself. And you'll notice that after a while it becomes maybe natural for him to put these masks on. It becomes a situation where he can't tell the difference between himself and the mask that he have created. Because you notice that at certain points in the story, he asks certain things and the mask starts to speak for him. He's having interaction with his manager, maybe his boss, and the mask speaks for him. He's having an interaction with family members, maybe his wife and children, and the mask starts to speak for him. See, that's a difficult situation that he's put himself in, right? It's a dangerous situation. And sure enough, after some time, the pressures start to mount, things start to become more difficult, and finally, there is a catastrophe. And what I mean by that is not something that's out of the ordinary that happens to James. There's simply one more task that's required of him. One more thing that asked of him, and it causes the whole setup to implode. It implodes. And the mask that he so carefully crafted for himself shatter and fall to the floor. See, one of the things you'll come to realize about the story is that it's really about whether or not a person can take on all these responsibilities while at the same time remembering who they are. Who are you? Yes, you're a protector, you're a provider, you're a teacher, you're an employee, you're an uncle. You know, these are all responsibilities and titles that you may have, but who are you? Who are you? Because these titles, they're not who you are. They're what you do. They're what you do. So who are you? And if a person in life neglects finding out or continuing to explore who they are, then the foundation that you build a mask on top of is going to be shaky. It's not going to be a sound foundation. And after a while, after the pressure, after the wear and tear of having to balance all of the responsibilities that a person had, after that starts to have an impact on the person, sad to say, sometimes it causes a breakdown. It causes a breakdown. And that's what was being described by the shattering of all of the masks that James had. He was so proud of what he had built. But what he had built in actuality was something that was not true to who he was. Because he didn't know who he was. He let the mask be, in all intents and purposes, what dictated how he behaved and how he responded and how he spoke. So who was he? During this whole episode, you never really find out who James is. Because James has allowed the things that he would do from day to day to become who he is, his identity. And so toward the end of the piece, you notice that it talked about being an imposter. Imposter syndrome, actually. Because there are so many things that you get tied up in. So many things that you have to do throughout the day, throughout life, that you hit a point in life and you say, man, is this who I am? And a lot of times the answer to the question is absolutely not. This is not who you are. This is just something that you've done. This is a persona that you've adopted out of a need to protect yourself. And so I think that in the end, when all of the masks were taken away, even in the short story, you see that it said that the face now, it looked more honest. And see, that's the thing. For us as humans, we need to be honest. We do. We need to make sure that the life we live is one that involves not only being honest with other people, but being honest with ourselves. Be honest. Be who you are. And so that's the best kind of honesty that you can give. To be in a situation with a person and you're authentically giving them who you are, without a doubt. You're making sure that they know who you are in reality. So now, and this is a question here that I'm sure, so who is James in the story? Well, I say with quite a bit of hesitance that James pictures me. Taking on so many masks, wearing them as a badge of honor, and then finally the pressures of life, the pressures of relationships, the pressures of family, the pressures of providing, the pressures of protecting, and the pressures of teaching, they finally have an impact on you. And you find yourself going through a collapse. You see everything that you work for crumble in front of you. And at that particular moment, you're forced to fight with the notion that you have to relearn who you actually are so that you can rebuild and you can start anew. And so that's what I think was the issue with James. He needed to start anew. He needed to get himself together in a sense. And it wasn't going to be by taking the mask that had broken and putting them back together. It wasn't going to be that. It wasn't going to be him trying to figure out a way to navigate based on those broken pieces. No, he was going to have to get back in contact and get back in touch with himself. And so I think that's a powerful lesson. You're not an imposter a lot of times. A lot of time what it is that you've just forgotten who you are and what you stand for. And in situations where there's so much pressure to be or to live up to a certain standard, then it has to be a point where you look at things logically and say that I need to start working more on developing myself, finding happiness within myself, being able to look at situations and say, no, I'm not going to get involved in this situation because it might prove to be too much. And I think that's what needed to happen with James. But he continued down that path until, he had to. He had to collapse. That was going to be the only way that he was going to give attention to the things that needed his attention. He was going to have to collapse. He was going to have to go through that in order to understand that there has to be a better way of living. There has to be a better way of doing things. It's important to still be a protector, provider, a teacher. It's important to still hold those responsibilities and do everything that we possibly can to protect those around us. But at the same time, be aware that there are things that you need as a person. There are things that you're going to have. And there's nothing wrong with making sure that you have those things because, like I mentioned, if the foundation is not sure, if the foundation is not reliable, then anything that you build on it is going to collapse. So that's the thought for this morning, man. I hope it wasn't too heavy. I hope it wasn't too difficult, but, I have to say that James is me because I went through that same thing. And unless you go through something like that, a lot of times you're going to go on with life as if nothing is happening. But time and difficulty has a way of putting life into perspective for you, even if you're unwilling to yourself. So, as you can tell, man, I've already made it to work. And we're going to go in and we're going to give a good 8 hours. We're going to have a wonderful day. Matter of fact, we're going to have a wonderful rest of the week. And I hope that that's the case for you. I hope that you're able to achieve all of the goals that you set. I hope that you're able to do everything that you need to do. And so I love you. Peace.